On a humid morning in August of 2019 in McLean County, Illinois, the soybeans stood ready, heavy, full, and timed within a window that wouldn't wait for anyone. 38-year-old Aaron Mitchell stood in the cab of his brand-new combine, a 2018 John Deere S770, for 155 horsepower, paid for with a $412,000 loan signed just 9 months earlier. He had 300 acres to bring in before the next storm system rolled down from Iowa, and the machine wouldn't start. Not because of fuel, not because of belts, not even because of a mechanical failure. The display screen, bright, clean, and smug, flashed a message in block letters. System locked. Software update required. Aaron stared at it like it had insulted him. He turned the key again. Nothing. Outside, the air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. "Try it again," someone said behind him. That someone was Daniel Brooks, 29, regional equipment rep, clean boots, pressed shirt, the kind of man who sold technology like it was a religion. Aaron tried again. Nothing. Daniel chuckled lightly, not cruel yet, just confident. "It's a cloud sync issue. Happens sometimes. We'll patch it remotely." He tapped his tablet. Waited. Signal lagged. No update. No combine. No harvest. And standing 50 yards away, leaning against the fence like he had all the time in the world, was Walter Green, 72 years old, farming the same 180 acres since 1971. His hat was older than Daniel's career. His boots were cracked, but clean. And beside him, sitting quiet and low like it had no need to prove anything, was a 1974 International Harvester 915 combine. No screens, no software, no patience for excuses. Let me tell you about Walter Green. He bought that 915 in March of 1978 from a retiring farmer in Sangamon County for $18,500. Back then, it was already considered behind the curve. 125 horsepower, gear-driven systems, no hydrostatic transmission. But Walter didn't buy machines for what they promised. He bought them for what they survived. He rebuilt the engine himself in 1989, replaced the feeder house chain in 1996, welded the grain tank seam in 2003 after a stress crack, split it open mid-harvest. Every bolt on that machine had been turned by his hands at least once, and it had never once asked for permission to work. Back in Aaron's field, Daniel tapped his screen harder now. "No signal," he muttered. "We'll hotspot it." Aaron looked out at the sky again. The clouds had moved closer, faster. "How long?" Aaron asked. Daniel shrugged. "An hour, maybe 2. Aaron laughed once. Short, sharp, not amused. "I don't have 2 hours. From the fence line, Walter spoke. Not loud, not urgent, just clear enough to carry. "You got about 45 minutes before that wind turns." Daniel turned, half smiling. "Weather app says 3 hours. Walter didn't move. Weather don't read apps. Daniel laughed this time. Fully, out loud. And that was the moment. The laugh. It echoed just enough for the hired hands to hear it, for Aaron to feel it, for Walter to register it without reacting. "Sir," Daniel said, still smiling, "with respect, this isn't 1974 anymore. These machines are precision systems. You can't just turn a key and expect." Walter pushed himself off the fence. Slowly. "You're right," he said. "You can't." He walked toward his combine, each step measured like he was crossing ground he already understood. Aaron watched him. Daniel smirked. And somewhere above them, thunder rolled low. "Have you ever owned something that everyone else called outdated?" Until the moment it was the only thing that worked, Walter climbed into the 915. No screen lit up. No message flashed. He turned the key. The engine coughed once. Then again. And then it started. Deep, steady, certain, not loud, not impressive. Just working. Daniel shook his head, still smiling, like it was a novelty act. "Sure," he said. "It runs, but it won't keep up. That thing's barely pushing 2.5 miles per hour under load." Walter adjusted the throttle. "Don't need speed," he said. "Need steady." Aaron looked between them, between the silent $400,000 machine and the running one that had already lived through 4 presidents, 2 recessions, and more harvests than he could count. Can it do beans? Aaron asked. Walter didn't answer right away. He eased the combine forward, lowered the header, let it bite into the first row. The machine didn't hesitate, didn't stall, didn't ask for a signal. It just cut, clean. Daniel crossed his arms. Even if it works, you'll lose yield. Older threshing systems. Walter spoke over him. Not louder, just finished before he could continue. Grain tank holds 120 bushels. Unload auger still runs true. Sieves are set for this field. Been set since 2007. Daniel blinked. Aaron stepped closer. The beans fed in. The auger turned. The first stream of grain hit the tank with a sound that hadn't changed in decades. Solid, certain, and then the wind shifted. Fast, hard. The first drops of rain hit the windshield of a combine that couldn't start. And in that moment, Aaron realized something that would change everything about the way he farmed. Because the old machine wasn't just running. It was the only one that could. And it wasn't slowing down. The rain didn't come all at once. It started the way it always does in central Illinois. Light, almost polite, like it's asking permission before it takes everything you've got. But Walter Green didn't look up. He didn't check the sky. He didn't adjust his pace. He already knew. The 1974 International Harvester 915 moved through Aaron Mitchell's soybean field at a steady 2.7 miles per hour, header low, real turning with a rhythm that had outlasted every trend in modern agriculture. The engine note didn't change. Not when the wind picked up. Not when the moisture crept into the pods. Not when the first real sheet of rain started to fall. It just kept working. Aaron stood at the edge of the field, boots sinking slightly into the softening soil, watching something he hadn't expected to see in his lifetime. Consistency. Daniel stood beside him, tablet now useless in his hand. The hotspot had failed. The signal had dropped completely. The $412,000 combine sat silent behind them, its screen still glowing with that same message. System locked. Even if he finishes this pass, Daniel said quieter now, he won't make the whole field. Not before the ground gets too wet. Aaron didn't answer. He was doing the math. 300 acres. Average yield, 60 bushels per acre. Market price, $8.90 per bushel that week. Every acre lost to rain damage would cost him over $530. And Walter was already 10 acres in. Let me tell you about that machine again. The International Harvester 915 wasn't built for comfort. It wasn't built for speed. It was built in an era when steel was thick, tolerances were forgiving, and engineers assumed the man operating it would understand it better than any manual ever could. The engine, a DT414 diesel, produced around 125 horsepower, but what it lacked in peak output, it made up for in torque delivered low and steady. No electronics, no sensors, no software layers between intention and action, just linkage, fuel, compression, motion. That's the difference most people don't understand. Horsepower is what a machine can do at its peak. Torque is what it can do all day. Walter's combine didn't care about peak. It cared about not stopping. Back in the field, the rain picked up, visibility dropped, the soil darkened, and still, the 915 moved, row after row, pass after pass. Aaron felt something shift in his chest. Not panic, not relief, recognition. He stepped forward, closer to the edge of the cut rows, watching the grain unload into the waiting wagon Walter had pulled into position earlier, without saying a word. How long has he been doing this? Aaron asked. Daniel hesitated. Farming? I don't know. 40 years? 50. Longer, Aaron said. Long enough not to need a signal. Daniel didn't laugh this time. Have you ever been so sure you were right that you didn't even consider what would happen if you weren't? The rain turned heavy. Water started pooling between the rows. Modern combines, with their weight and wide tires, would have struggled now. Traction systems adjusting, sensors recalibrating, software trying to compensate for conditions it was never designed to handle without full system integration. Walter's machine didn't adjust. It endured. The narrow tires cut through the soft ground instead of floating on top of it. The weight distribution, simpler, more direct, kept it moving where newer machines might have hesitated. Daniel watched it like he was seeing something break the rules he'd built his career on. "This doesn't make sense," he said quietly. Walter finished another pass. Turned slow, lined up again. No wasted motion, no correction, just experience. By the time the rain hit its hardest, he had cleared nearly half the field. Aaron climbed up onto the side ladder as Walter paused to unload again. "You didn't have to do this," Aaron said. Walter kept his eyes on the grain flow. "Didn't do it for you." Aaron frowned. "Then why?" Walter finally looked at him. "Because that machine doesn't like sitting still when there's work to do." Aaron nodded slowly. Behind them, Daniel stepped closer, no longer smiling, no longer certain. "How is it not clogging?" he asked. "Moisture content alone should be." Walter cut him off gently. "Cylinder speed set lower. Concaves wider. You push less. You lose less." Daniel opened his mouth, closed it again. The rain softened slightly, but the damage had already been decided. Fields around the county would sit untouched for days now, maybe weeks, waiting for conditions to recover. But not this one. Not all of it. Walter pulled the lever. The auger emptied the last of the grain into the wagon. He shut the engine down. Silence settled over the field, broken only by the sound of rain on metal. Aaron looked out over what had been saved. Not everything, but enough. More than enough. Daniel stood there, soaked, quiet, holding a tablet that suddenly felt like it belonged to a different world. What do you want for it?" he asked finally, nodding toward the 915. Walter wiped his hands on a rag, looked at the machine, then back at Daniel. And what he said next wasn't what either of them expected. "What makes you think it's for sale?" Walter didn't raise his voice when he said it. He didn't need to. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, the kind that settles into the soil instead of fighting it. And in that quiet, his words carried farther than Daniel expected. Daniel shifted his weight, boots sinking slightly in the mud now. For the first time since he'd stepped onto Aaron Mitchell's farm that morning, he looked uncertain. Not about the machine, but about the man standing in front of him. "I just meant," Daniel started, then stopped. "It's a valuable piece of equipment. Clearly." Walter glanced back at the 915, water beating along the faded red paint, streaking down over decades of wear that no showroom polish could replicate. "Valuable to who?" he asked. Daniel didn't answer. Aaron stepped in, his voice quieter than it had been all day. "You saved half my crop." Walter shook his head once. "You saved it. You just needed something that would listen. Let me tell you about something most people miss when they talk about machines like that one. It isn't just about age. It isn't just about simplicity. It's about control. Modern equipment is designed to optimize performance across thousands of variables: fuel efficiency, emissions, yield mapping, GPS alignment. But in doing that, it removes something that used to be standard: direct authority. When a system locks, you don't fix it. You wait for permission. Walter never waited. That combine never asked. Daniel looked down at his tablet again, then powered it off. Not because it was out of battery, but because it wasn't helping anymore. "I was wrong," he said, almost to himself. Walter didn't react. He just started walking back toward his truck, each step steady, like the ground hadn't changed at all. Aaron followed him. "Walter," he said, catching up, "I need to finish the rest of the field. Once it dries, my machine will start," Walter said, "once it gets what it's asking for. And if it doesn't..." Walter opened the truck door, paused. Then he looked at Aaron in a way that felt less like advice and more like a decision already made. "Then you figure out what you're farming for." Aaron frowned. "What does that mean?" Walter didn't answer right away. He reached into the cab, pulled out a small metal box, old, dented, the kind that had held bolts and washers for longer than Daniel had been alive. Inside was a set of tools, wrenches, gauges, a feeler strip worn smooth from use. "You ever adjusted your own concave clearance?" Walter asked. Aaron hesitated. "No, that's calibrated by the system." Walter nodded once. "That's what I thought." Have you ever relied on something so completely that you forgot how to do the work without it? Daniel stepped closer again, but this time there was no distance in his posture, no superiority, just curiosity. What are you saying? He asked. Walter handed the box to Aaron. I'm saying your field isn't the problem, he said. Your machine isn't the problem either. Aaron looked down at the tools. Then what is? Walter closed the truck door, the part where you stop being the one in charge. The words landed heavier than the rain ever had. Daniel exhaled slowly. You're talking about control systems, firmware layers. That's how these machines maintain precision. Walter shook his head. No, that's how they replaced judgment. Silence settled between them again. Out in the field, the cut rows stood as proof of what had just happened. Not perfect, not uniform, but harvested, saved. Daniel looked at them, then back at Walter. I laughed at you, he said plainly. Walter met his eyes. You laughed at something you didn't understand. Daniel nodded. Yeah. Another pause. Then quietly, I'd like to learn. That was the moment everything shifted. Not the rain, not the harvest. The man. Walter studied him for a second longer than comfortable. Then he gave a small nod. Be here at 6 tomorrow morning, he said. If you're serious. Daniel didn't hesitate. I will. Walter climbed into his truck. Aaron stood there, still holding the metal box, still trying to understand what had just been handed to him. As the engine turned over and the truck pulled away, Daniel looked out at the field again, half saved by a machine he would have dismissed an hour earlier. And for the first time in his career, he wasn't thinking about selling anything. He was thinking about learning. Because what Walter Green was offering wasn't a machine. It was something far more dangerous to the way things work now. And the next morning, at exactly 6 o'clock, Daniel Brooks would find out just how much he didn't know. At 6 o'clock the next morning, the rain had stopped, but the ground still held its memory. Mist hovered low over the fields of McLean County, Illinois, the kind that softens everything except the sound of boots on gravel. Daniel Brooks arrived early, 5:47 a.m., his truck parked just outside Walter Green's barn, engine off, hands still on the wheel like he wasn't entirely sure what he'd signed up for. The barn doors were already open. Inside, the 1974 International Harvester 915 sat where Walter had left it, dried now, quiet again, as if the previous day had never happened. Walter stood beside it, coffee in one hand, the other resting on the edge of the feeder housing. You're early, he said. Daniel stepped out of the truck. Didn't want to be late. Walter nodded once. Good. Aaron arrived 10 minutes later, the metal toolbox still in the passenger seat of his pickup. He carried it in like it weighed more than it did. They didn't waste time. No speeches. No introductions. Walter set the coffee down and walked to the side of the combine. First thing, he said, you learn how it works without being told. He opened a panel. Inside, belts, pulleys, chains. Nothing hidden. Nothing abstracted. Air comes in here. Fuel goes there. Power moves through the shaft. You follow it. Daniel leaned in, eyes scanning. Try to map what he was seeing, everything he thought he knew. There's no diagnostics, he said. Walter glanced at him. You're looking at them. Let me tell you about what happened over the next 3 days. They didn't harvest. Not at first. They learned. Walter showed them how to set cylinder speed by ear, how to adjust concave clearance by feel, how to listen for a belt that was about to slip before it ever did. He explained how grain moisture changed the way the machine needed to run. Not through sensors, but through resistant sound and vibration. Aaron struggled at first. His instincts had been replaced by systems that made decisions for him. But slowly, something came back. Daniel struggled more. Not because he couldn't understand, but because he had to unlearn first. On the 4th day, the ground had dried enough. They went back to field. Aaron's John Deere 770 had received its update overnight. The system unlocked. The screen cleared. Everything was ready. He looked at it, then at Walter, then at the 915. Which one? He asked. Walter didn't answer. He just handed him the keys to the old combine. Have you ever had the choice to go back to what's easier or forward into something you finally understand. Aaron climbed into the 915. No screen greeted him. No system confirmed his readiness. Just the key, the throttle, the work. He turned it. The engine started. And this time, when he pulled into field, he didn't hesitate. He adjusted the settings himself. Slower than Walter. Less certain. But the machine responded. Not perfectly, but honestly. Row by row, the rest of the field came in. Not as fast as the S770 could have done it on a perfect day, but faster than waiting. And more importantly, without asking permission, Daniel stood at the edge of the field again, but this time there was no tablet in his hands, just a notebook. He wrote everything down, every sound, every adjustment, every mistake, because he understood now. This wasn't about rejecting technology. It was about remembering what came before it. 5 years later, in October 2024, Aaron Mitchell still farms those same 300 acres in McLean County. He still owns a John Deere, but it isn't the machine he trusts first. The 1974 International Harvester 915 sits in a newer barn now, restored but not replaced. It runs every season, not because it has to, because it can. Daniel Brooks left equipment sales in 2021. He didn't quit farming. He started apprenticing. Now, he runs a small operation of his own, 80 acres, diversified, with machines he can fix without calling anyone. He still uses technology, but he doesn't depend on it. And Walter Green? He passed away quietly in the spring of 2023, 86 years old. In his sleep, the farm went to his daughter, who kept the land and the machines exactly the way he left them. The 915 still runs. Every harvest. Same engine. Same sound. Same work. Because some things don't stop being useful just because the world forgets how they work. If you've ever known someone like Walter, someone who kept something running long after everyone else said it was finished, tell me about them in the comments. Those stories matter more than you think. And if you want to hear about the farmer in western Kansas who ran the same tractor for 52 years without ever replacing the engine block, that story is coming. You'll want to be here for it. Some machines are built to be replaced. Others are built to remind you that you never should have stopped understanding them.